so most of their relationship stuff is just them being kind of awkward, and then being less and less awkward until they kiss. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. I am a comic book artist and film enthusiast, which makes me the only person qualified on the planet Earth to do an MCU rewatch to end all MCU rewatches. I am watching every Marvel Cinematic Universe movie leading up to Avengers Doomsday in chronological order, and seeing how they interact with each other as a whole universe and as individual movies. So join me as I talk about Kenneth Branagh's Thor, starring Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman. So just first and foremost, this project has been just really truly an exercise in confronting how idiotic I used to be as a child. My impressions of Thor going into it were that I remember this being boring and dull and lifeless and just kind of ugh. I remember I was not looking forward to watching Kenneth Branagh's Thor because I was like, this is the boring one. There's not even any good fight scenes and it just sucks. And they keep shoehorning Jane Foster in there. Stupid. I was a stupid little boy. Watching it again with fresh eyes, Thor is, granted, not without its flaws, but it is way more heartfelt than I remembered and way more aggressive about its sincerity, and that won me over so completely. I had a fantastic time watching the original Thor. In context of the universe, yes, but trying to forget everything I thought about the movie. This is way more fun than I remembered it being, and way more investing than I remembered it being. The movie is essentially two movies, and I think the biggest flaw in the movie is related to that. But the movie is two movies. It is this Shakespearean epic play, and it is this UFO movie set in New Mexico. And I think when it is doing those two things, it does wonderful work. I always think of this movie as being something that doesn't really go very hard into the comic booky cool visuals and all that. And that is just entirely not true. It is this cosmic, golden, amazing city that looks ancient and technological and rad. And it just looks and feels so cool. All of the costumes are intricate and perfectly designed, and they feel like weaponry and armor and clothing, but they also feel like costumes and they feel reverential to the source material. And on this side, you have this really fun story of these scientists trying to figure out this thing they don't understand and learn about this entire society, this whole side of the universe that they never knew about through the lens of this fish out of water guy. Both of those stories, very fun, very successful. There's some middle gray area here where it doesn't totally work. A lot of the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff in this movie, to me, is just kind of boring. I think having these characters that are so completely different from each other, crashing into each other's worlds, is a lot of fun when it's a lot of fun. And then a lot of it is just people not making the logical leaps that we need them to make and taking a very, very long time to get to places that seem like, okay, I understand that you don't think he's Thor, but something's going on here because you see these giant runes on the ground and you saw this huge beam of colored light falling from the sky, so you know something's happening. And I think really what I'm coming to realize is that this is a movie that is at its very best when it takes itself dead serious, no matter what it's doing. Even if it's doing jokes and little gags and bits, that's great, but it is taking itself seriously. It is not treating Thor, this fish out of water guy, as a cartoon. It is treating him as a person from a completely different society being dropped into this situation. And to me, that's the core, the heart of this movie. It believes in itself, so I kind of have no choice but to believe in it. The things where they're fully Shakespearean, and most of the Asgardian stuff really feels Shakespearean, that doesn't play if they don't believe that what they're doing is right, which a huge part of that is Tom Hiddleston. He is obviously great as Loki. This is not a surprise. Everybody has that opinion. I don't think I've met a single person who doesn't like his portrayal of Loki. What I didn't realize is that he had it going from the very beginning, and what makes him work is that he believes his character so deeply, so intrinsically, that you also have to. So when there's these big, weird, dramatic things about who should be king and who's the next ruler of this otherworldly, interplanetary thing, you believe it because it's like, yeah, that guy, he wants to be king. He wants to have a little eye patch maybe and hold a big sword and control the Rainbow Bridge. This movie is also very choosy with where it plays its comic booky hand. Having things like this huge kaiju in the Frost Giants world, obviously, very comic booky. But then it also doesn't have, the 13-legged horse or whatever that is, and it doesn't have the like Korg from the later movies. Like, it's careful to not blow out your sensors with things that would throw you off of the movie. It is so good at selling what it needs to sell that this movie plays in a way that I really, really had a great time with. It is, like I said, very good at selling Thor. It's also very good at selling Jane Foster and her arc and what she needs to kind of go through as a scientist and as a person who wants there to be something bigger than this world. That is very fun. Natalie Portman is very good in that role, and she does a good job kind of handling the character development that needs to happen. And the movie is very interested in caring about both of these characters. Weirdly, though, I don't know that the movie is particularly invested in them together. This is not a movie that I consider particularly romantic, even though I think it is trying to be. And I think part of that is because Thor's version of romantic is this very grandiose Shakespearean thing, and Jane's version of romantic is this very normal, earthly, like, even she's not great with it because she's just kind of married to her work kind of thing. And there is a version of that that I think works really well, but the movie doesn't, honestly, it doesn't really have time to engage with a lot of that, and also it doesn't choose to engage with a lot of that. So most of their relationship stuff is just them being kind of awkward and then being less and less awkward until they kiss. It is a serviceable romance in a movie that kind of wants it to be more than serviceable, and I find that a little odd and a little funny, but also I don't know that it's a huge deal because overall the general swaths of this movie work tremendously well. If we're going to talk about the things that don't work in this movie, I think there are two major ones. First and foremost, the more important of the two, those two stories never fully collide in on each other, and those two sides of the movie, like those two genres that this movie chooses to be, never interact with each other in any particularly tangible way. So it is either Shakespearean or science fiction, and it's never both, which is a little weird. It makes it feel disjointed, and scene to scene, you're just watching this movie be a completely different movie than the last scene, which can make it a little hard to get into the rhythm. And it's a thing that I appreciate about it because it feels so unique in that way, but it is also kind of challenging in the sense that it never feels cohesive as a piece together. The other significantly less important issue that I have with this movie is the Dutch angles. There's 100 billion of them, and most of them don't serve any purpose, so what are we doing here, Kenneth? Kenny? Ken? Can I call you K-Dog? What are we doing with the Dutch angles? It just doesn't, there's no reason for them. That said, we are also addressing these movies from a universal perspective, and this is a really intriguing one because it introduces this whole new side of the universe. The Asgardians, the history, the ancient kind of god feeling is something that we know will go on to be very important for the rest of the universe. And this is our first crack at it, and I think for that, it plays quite well. It does, again, a good job of setting up these things to be believable and make sense, and it kind of dissuades you from having any questions. It's like you could wonder, where is Asgard? Is Asgard physically a place, or is it like a different realm, or what is it? And the movie's just like, hey man, magic is just science you don't understand yet, so don't even worry about it. Like, it's just so uninterested in engaging with where in the cosmos Asgard necessarily is, and that's fun for me. I think we'll probably get more answers on that as we go through the rest of the movies, but I'm okay with this movie just kind of being like, Asgard is a place, it's upside down, there's some water, don't worry about it. I mentioned this in the Iron Man 2 review, but it is fun to see Coulson kind of pick up his story that he left in Iron Man 2 and join this movie halfway through, where he left Iron Man 2 halfway through, he joins Thor also halfway through, and that's really fun. It makes this universe feel connected in a way that I don't think any other universe has really done. A thing that I love about these movies, a thing that I think works so perfectly well, especially in situations like this, where they clearly knew where they were going with it and weren't just trying to drop a seed to pick it up later and hope that it sprouts. We also meet Hawkeye for the first time, Clint Barton, played by Jeremy Renner, and he's silly. He's a silly little goose, and he's kind of dumb, but in a way that I really like. There's a great little moment where he's like, Fury goes like, hey, I need a gun in the air, I need eyes. And he reaches for a sniper rifle, and then he pauses, and then he grabs a bow and arrow. I love that those are his two options. I love that he's like, no, you know what? This is my thing now. It feels like he's solidifying, like, and now I'm this guy. I'm the guy who uses the joke gift we bought from a Shields. Like, it's so awesome, and it's such a weird little thing to put in here. If you didn't know that's Hawkeye, you're like, What the hell is that? And it's funny that the movies are not really ready to engage with Hawkeye as a silly guy, because he is a silly guy. He's a person who goes around in a universe where we have arms dealers selling missiles that can explode into smaller missiles and just decimate entire regions. And he has a bow and arrow. And that's silly. I mean, it just is silly, but it's silly in a way that I think is fun, and in a way that if we engage with it, it can be even more fun. And this, and we'll get to it later, but Avengers, not interested in engaging with how silly Hawkeye is, but it is indescribable how much I love him. We also see Agent Sitwell, who will be important later in Captain America Winter Soldier. I'm pretty sure, I think that's him. I don't know. There's a bunch of agents, he's there, don't worry about it. Obviously, the big thing that this movie does is set up the major players in the Avengers. We're setting up Loki as this big villain that will come back in the Avengers. We're setting up Thor as this otherworldly, godly presence that will come into the Avengers. And I think the movie solidifies them as interesting characters that we know enough about and care enough about that when they show up in the Avengers, it's wild and weird and fun. It is odd, just from this movie's perspective. From a Universal perspective, it makes perfect sense. Loki dies at the end of this movie and he comes back. Also technically at the end of this movie, but really in Avengers. For the story that this movie is trying to tell, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, Loki sacrifices himself really mostly out of, like, shame and guilt, and he dies, and then Thor has to reconcile with that his brother was not the person that he thought he was. Odin has to accept that his adopted son tried to take over the throne. Going through that emotional process, it just is kind of strange to end the movie with, like, anyway, so he's coming back. It just feels like if the Amazing Spider-Man 2 happened exactly as it did, and then the post-credit scene for Amazing Spider-Man 2 is just Gwen Stacy waking up from a coma being... Actually, it really feels like X-Men 3, where he dies, Professor X dies, and then the post-credit scene is like, anyway, he didn't die. And you're like, well, then for what was it? Overall, Thor is a movie that sets the tone really well for Asgard. It has a lot of fun being a Shakespearean epic. It also has a lot of fun being a science fiction movie, and I had a lot of fun watching Thor. Thanks so much for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on movies, comics, TV shows, anything in the MCU, I will be doing a video for every Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, so please keep an eye out for those. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and comment down below which movie you're most excited about. Or do none of those things, because I am not your dad.